Good evening, everyone. My name's Shane. I'm a recovered addict. Thank you, Dave, for asking me to share. Thank you, everyone, for helping to put this meeting on. It's a real honour and a privilege to share for my home group, to share in any meeting of CA, but especially this one. It still amazes me that I get asked to do this sort of stuff because, yeah, I never expected to be in a position where I had anything to offer when it comes to recovering from addiction. You know, I spent many years in a real dark place, absolutely hopeless. Never thought I would escape from that misery, but as a result of Cocaine Anonymous, 12 steps, good sponsorship, getting connected to a power, I sit here today, recovered, happy, free from that stuff. Absolutely free, not free, which is a miracle, absolute miracle. I arrived in Cocaine Anonymous absolutely terrified of living. I was incapable of living without a drink or drug. I'd got to the point in my life where I realised I couldn't live with it either. You know, I couldn't continue drinking and using in the way that I had been. You know, I suffered it for a long time, and I think more importantly, towards the end, I realised my family was suffering it. You know, and it just, the weight of that just got too much. You know, and I come to that jumping off point. But when I arrived here, I didn't understand what was wrong with me. You know, the fact that I came to a meeting of recovery showed that, you know, I had some awareness that the drink and drugs weren't doing me no favors, but I genuinely didn't understand what an addict was. I didn't understand what alcoholism was. You know, I didn't know why I kept making the same mistakes over and over again. I didn't know why I couldn't handle the feelings that I had, the emotions I had, and why I kept turning to drink and drugs and making the same mistakes, as I said. But, you know, as a result of coming here, that stuff was explained to me. You know, and what I found was that the nature of the illness that was described to me by my sponsor and that was explained in the big book was just like a roadmap of my life. You know, that all of those feelings of insecurity, all of the fear, the awkwardness, from as long as I can remember. You know, as far back as I can remember, I didn't fit in, didn't feel right, and for as far back as I can remember, a drink fixed that. You know, for quite a while, it was the perfect solution. A drink or a drug fixed that. You know, I would be totally anxious, not wanting to go out, not wanting to mix with people, just feeling like a complete outsider, looking at groups of people thinking, how the fuck do you do that? How do you make friends? How do you genuinely feel happy? You know, these people look like they were really having a good time, not just pretending to. You know, but I would have a drink or a drug, and all of that would be fixed. I would be, you know, I'd be able to do all of that stuff. I would be able to fucking dance and laugh and joke and mix and talk to people and do all the things that I could never do. And it worked fucking brilliantly. Like, it really did, for a while, until the consequences started to come, and then I needed more and more and more just to get to that sort of level point. And eventually I wasn't drinking and using to have a good time. I was just drinking and using to live. I was drinking and using to go to work. I was drinking and using to just do daily things, just to leave the house. You know, it wasn't that exhilarating lifestyle that I thought it would be. It was just, you know, if I didn't have it, I couldn't handle anything, you know. And I put a lot of people through a lot of harm over the years. You know, it led me to do things that I would never do if I didn't have this illness. You know, yeah, there was a lot of stuff I'm not proud of, but you know, I never expected my life to end up with police cells and hospitals and all the tears and lies and all of the drama that I put people through, all of the debt, the chaos, the lost jobs, the broken promises, all of that stuff. You know, I didn't set out with those intentions, but that's where it took me regularly for a long time, and in the end, it wasn't the chaos that kind of ended it. It was just the daily miserable life. It was just one day after the other that just accumulated and got to the point where I just couldn't handle it anymore. My days at the end, and this was just a normal day, not a disastrous day. The disastrous day was waking up with a drink driving ban, or a threat of a prison sentence, or waking up in a hospital or something like that. It was, just a standard day, a Tuesday when I should just be going to work. I would wake up, come to after another night of getting on it, and maybe an hour's sleep, and I would instantly have that sinking feeling of looking next to me and seeing if my partner was actually laying there, or if she had got up in the night or gone and slept on the sofa or done whatever. And then the next thing I would do was check my phone to find out how much money I've gambled, or what stupid messages or phone calls that I've made, and I would try and piece together the night before, and then would try and drag myself from my bed and, probably late for work, and get halfway there and just be playing all of these scenarios through about how shit my day was going to be and how much hard work it is and how much I'm not rewarded enough, I'm not paid enough. Why do I have to do this? Life's unfair. And everyone else should pay my bills for me. And then I would rock up to work still ungrateful, miserable, hiding away from anyone, regretting all the chaos that I caused last night, telling myself that today's going to be different. I need to make sure I don't drink again because she's going to go nuts, and I don't know how many chances I've got. And then, I would get to the end of the day, and the hangover would have worn off a bit by then, and day wouldn't have been that bad, and I would have managed to get through. And I would start thinking to myself that maybe on the way home, because I've got a little bit of time, I might just stop in a pub and have one pint. Or I might just pick up a few beers, or I can have a couple of them on the way home, because that won't be dangerous, driving home drinking. But then I'll go in, have my dinner and have an early night, and it'll be fine. And I'll have that one drink. And then the next thing I'm calling the dealer. And then the next thing I'm waking up in the morning and the whole night's gone and I don't know what the fuck has happened. And that was my existence for fucking years, for absolutely years. And sprinkled with a bit of chaos, as I said. And eventually it was just too much. I just didn't want to live like that anymore. And I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I couldn't continue in that way. And I got caught drinking once again, and tears and begging for forgiveness. I won't do it again, and all of that nonsense. And I just realised I couldn't go on, And I had a family member who was in recovery, and I'd always been told that I need to give him a call and ask him for help, and I never had. But to say that this day it was different, and something felt different, and I had that snap that we talk about, and I was granted the willingness to actually ring him, that desperation to ask for help that I'd never done before. And he directed me to a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. And I thought that was the end of my life because I'd never done anything without drinking and using. As I say, I needed it really to leave the house. I'd never been to football I'd never done anything. I never everything was associated with drink and drugs. So when I realised, I come to the realisation that I might not be able to do that anymore. I genuinely thought that life is going to be boring after. And little did I know that was the first day of a completely new life that I was given in here. And from early days, I just grabbed a hold of this stuff. I instantly heard a message of depth and weight that told me that if I do some stuff and go through this work, these 12 steps that we talk about in here, that I never have to drink and use again. But more importantly, I can be happy about it, because I think that's what kept me away for a long time. My image of recovery was from like TV, where they all just sit around in a circle and cry. And I didn't fucking want to live like that. That's the last thing I wanted. And when I come into a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous and it wasn't like that, I was fucking relieved, and I found a sponsor who gave me some simple directions. He told me to pray, to meditate, to write gratitude lists, to read big books, and to call a couple of people. And I'm a really well, I'm not argumentative. I'm skeptical about everything, and I've got to research it all. I never just get on with something. But this is the first thing in my life that I just did. I just did it. He gave me stuff to do, and I just did it, even though I didn't really think it was going to work. And very quickly it started to. Within a couple of days, I could see that writing the gratitude list. I could see that actually I had some amazing things in my life. I had a lovely partner, a beautiful little boy, a great job, a house, a car. All of the shiny things that, although I always wanted a better one, actually I had more than what I needed. And the meditation, it just started to slow me down a little bit. It was hard, it was uncomfortable, but it just started to slow me down. And the praying, I hid in the toilet downstairs for a good, I don't know, a few weeks, months maybe, because I was embarrassed about it, but I still did it. I did it, and it taught me that humility, and I started to go through the program of 12 steps, and the sponsor started to take me through the steps, and yeah, what an amazing process. And I won't go into too much detail with it now, but the point of the 12 steps is to get me connected to a higher power that I was raised a Catholic, so I instantly linked that sort of God thing with that religion. I lost that. I lost that early on, and I could see that I could develop my own vision of a higher power, my own vision of God, and that allowed me to do that. Going through the process of the 12 steps allowed me to see that it was my behaviors and my actions that led me to live the life that I had. Not there was no one else's fault. It was all my own fault, and that was a freeing experience, because then I could see, if it was all my fault, then I could do something about it. Do you know what I mean? I could change the trajectory of my life by changing my behaviors. And I saw the true nature of my defects. All the harms that I had caused. I could see the real reason why I'd done all those things, and a lot of it was down to fear. It was down to selfishness, self-centeredness, worrying about what everyone thinks of me. That's I don't think that ever really goes away. But now I can acknowledge it. I realise that that's all it is. When I'm coming on here and I've got to share on a meeting, and I'm thinking, God, what do I say? I only shared on one the other day. Everyone's going to be bored of listening to me, and maybe they are, but I need to not worry about that stuff. I need to not worry about that stuff. I looked at the harms I'd done to others, and I really tried to get an understanding of that. In our process of the steps, I had to write letters from those people to me. Get putting myself in their shoes, walking a mile in their shoes, and trying to fully understand what I did. And that was heartbreaking. Writing a letter from my son, writing a letter from my partner. The lies, the betrayal, the just not being there. You know what I mean? Not being present. I caused a lot of harm, and that process allowed me to see that. And then I was prepared to go out and make amends, and I did my best with that, and I had to own up to some stuff and pay some money back, and be as honest as I possibly could, and again, with that comes that freedom, and that I can look people in the eye and know that I've got nothing to hide anymore. I was then taught how to do inventory, to continuously look at myself, because I've gone through this process now. I've cleared my side of the street, and I need to keep it clean, and I need to do that on a daily basis. And as and when things come up, I need to take that spot check inventory, look at my part to play, and make an amends at where I need to, and continue to form that relationship with my higher power, grow in that understanding, and that's the thing that's going to keep me clean and sober. So I need to work at that, and not just in the morning, throughout the day. I need to constantly turn to that, and try to. Early on, I relied a lot on people and sponsors for the answers, because I didn't really have that contact. So I'll always be ringing and asking, what should I do here? What should I do there? But I need to be able to stand on my own 2 feet with it. So I need to practice that relationship, get in that thing, and develop that pause where I can pause and listen and try to do the right thing, which comes gradually. Yeah. And this step 12 was the biggest one. I need to go out, practice these principles in all my affairs. Do the right thing, be the person that I've committed to be. When I made that decision in step 3 to carry on with this stuff and completely change and give myself to my higher power. I need to genuinely do that, and not just in a meeting, not just while I'm sitting here saying all the great things that I do and that I've done. I need to practice it outside of the rooms where, when I'm at home with my family, when I'm at work, when I'm driving to work, when the people are cutting me up on the A12 or making me late for work because they crash even though it's a long straight line, all of that stuff. I need to continue to practice the principles, and then to carry the message to other people. I need to help people. I need to go out with sponsorship, with sharing back on meetings, with doing service. As a result of that, the obsession to drink and use left me within weeks. I don't know how or when it happened. I don't know how it happened, 12 steps, but I don't know when exactly it happened. It just went. And I just remember getting to the end of the day once thinking, that day was actually easy. I have not struggled. I haven't fought anyone. I haven't argued with anyone. I haven't battled with my head. And it was amazing, to get to the end of the day knowing I haven't hurt anyone, I haven't harmed anyone, and just be able to get a good night's sleep. These things come to me quickly. And yeah, then we're sent out to go and help people. And so I'm one of the blessed ones that managed to get this stuff. I came in, I got a sponsor, I'd done the steps, and I had that willingness and managed to stick with it and get through this. And relapse is not a part of my story, but it's not been through luck. I understand that I'm fully blessed, but I've fucking worked hard to stay here. I've done a lot. In my first year of recovery, I was going to meetings all over the place. I was taking all kinds of commitments. And the second year recovery, I was in district doing stuff with them, and then I went into H&I a bit later on, and it wasn't necessarily because I enjoyed it all. It was because I heard someone say something, and they said about a district meeting. They said, if you look around here, like the people here have got many years of sobriety, but they're not here because they've got many years of sobriety. They've got many years of sobriety because they're here. Because they do this stuff, and that really stuck with me. I see people struggle. I don't want that fucking life. It doesn't need to be like that. And what I've consistently seen and experienced is if I do this stuff every single day to the best of my ability, life doesn't need to be a struggle. It doesn't need to be a struggle. And that doesn't mean shit doesn't happen. I've had tough days and people have died, and I've had to really dig in, but I've never wanted to drink and use over it. It's never been as bad as those dark days before I found Cocaine Anonymous. And I've always had hope that it's going to get better. Not even hope. I've had faith. I've had full faith that actually, if I continue to do this, it's going to work out all right. I know I'm going to be all right, and that has been the case every day since. As I say, I've had to work pretty hard to stay here, but the things I've got from it make it more than worth it. I've got a beautiful life today. I've got a great job. My family is amazing. I've had another son in recovery, like 3 years old. Never known that old version of me. Oh, the boy is 8. Doesn't remember that horrible version of me. My relationship with my missus is amazing today. Again, it's not to say it's perfect, but it's amazing. It is. It's genuinely amazing. I found some really good friends in here that I've known for a long, long time, and I've learned from a lot of people. This group in particular, but there's a lot around Cocaine Anonymous that some amazing people in here. People that have been through things that I can only imagine, like how hard it was, and then to come out the other side, and it just proves to me every day, I still get surprised by it, but I shouldn't. The power of the 12 steps of getting connected to a power greater than yourself like that, like how much it can do for people. And, I wouldn't believe it if I haven't experienced it myself. And the most beautiful thing today is that I get to carry that message and to help other people. I've seen other people get their families back. I've helped them through that process to get to that point. And not all of them stick around. Not all of them stick around, but I've done all I can. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. But if you're new here, or if you're struggling with stuff, there is an absolutely amazing life on offer. Absolutely amazing. What I did was I got a sponsor and I got a big book. I went through the 12 steps and I just done it all. I didn't pick and choose. I just done it all. And what a wonderful life I found as a result. I'll leave it there.